So it's my pleasure to introduce the Chairman and CEO of Abbott, Robert Ford. Robert, 1996, what we gather, is when he started. So he's been there for a while. In fact, both of our CEOs started in 96. Took over as the CEO in March of 2020. Exciting time to be a CEO, as you all know. Graduate of BC, led the St. Jude's acquisition and other activities, and really leading Abbott, which is the biggest on a market cap basis of any of the med tech companies, through the challenges of today, and also for future generation plans, which we'll see. Robert, welcome.
Anyways, it's great to be here and to talk to you about Abbott and kind of our story and our long-term plan. In 1888, Dr. Abbott began making medicines in his home for his own patients. And 135 years after, Abbott is now a global health tech company operating in over 160 countries with over 110,000 employees around the world. And if you look at our history, we've changed so much, and we've had the courage to change over those years. But one thing that hasn't changed is our purpose, our mission, and the soul of the company, and that's really to transform healthcare, not for the next 5 years or the next decade, but really thinking about the impact that we can have across generations of healthcare. And what I'd like to do today a little bit is share the framework and the thinking about how we've been able to do that and sustainably do that for so long. One of the things that is always important for a healthcare company is to kind of define its why, its purpose, and healthcare is such a personal thing. And how do we think about that? How do our employees think about what we do every day when we come into the office? And one of the things that we've always talked about is the notion of dignity. That when you have an illness, when you're sick, that disease can take away some of your dignity, and in taking away some of that dignity, it can really prevent you from being your best and doing your best. And so what I like to do is just to try and encapsulate in 1 minute here how we think about healthcare and the role that Abbott plays in healthcare, and a lot of our why as to why we come into the office every day.
Human dignity pumps no blood, thinks no thoughts, moves no muscles, yet it's vital to every human being and profoundly linked to our health. And it's why we create pioneering nutrition and life-changing cardiac, diabetes, pain management, and testing technologies. Our hard-won breakthroughs aren't followed by parades, but by countless small victories. Steady hands, peaceful babies sleeping, a baseline of dignity. That simple, defiant act of taking back the tiny moments an illness took from you. At Abbott, that is what drives every breakthrough we make, because we believe everyone deserves to live a full and healthy life. Dignity demands it.
So that simple, defiant act, right, of trying to restore some of the dignity and restore some of the moments that a disease took for you, and that's really what we're all committed to doing and being about. And at the core of that is this belief and understanding that we have so many problems in our life, relationship, family, financial, you name it. But we feel that if you can have your health, and if that's something that you can move aside and not have to worry about, you can really tackle all of those challenges and those issues. And that's really behind this purpose, this idea of life to the fullest. We want to make sure that we can provide you the best, the best opportunity to be your best self. And our corporate values are really what guide a lot of our decision making and how we think about planning for the long term also. We have been a top performer for many, many decades across a variety of different dimensions. from an innovation standpoint, which is ultimately the lifeline, the lifeblood of our company. We've been recognized through various different awards regarding not only the quality and the inventiveness of our innovation, but also importantly the scale and the impact that it has on a large scale. From an ESG perspective, from a sustainability perspective, we've been long recognized as leaders in this field. We've been as part of the Dow Jones Sustainability Index for the last 17 years. We're viewed as a leader in terms of a lot of the ESG rankings that are out there. And Fortune has named us as one of the most admired companies since '84. And for 9 years, we've been ranked as the #1 in our peer group of medical products. And then also recognized from an employer perspective, recognized for our diversity in our hiring, in our workforce, recognized as a go-to workplace for scientists and for working mothers. Now, we're not in the business for collecting awards. That's not what we're doing. Obviously, the best recognition we have is when we receive emails or even letters. Yeah, there's still people that put pen to paper about how our products or how their experience in Abbott has had an impact on their life. But it's good. And it's a reinforcement that we feel that we're on the right track to be able to have on top of those day-to-day recognitions from other institutions about the work that we're doing. We are one of the largest and most diversified healthcare company in the world. We're present in over 160 countries. Like I said, 113,000 employees around the world. And every single year, our products interact, touch, improve the lives of 2 billion people around the world. And that's because of our scale. And we do that through these 4 sectors of businesses that we operate. And this diversity of how we operate our business. A lot of us believe that nutrition is kind of the foundation of good health. So we have a nutrition business that's focused on that, whether it's pediatric, adult, medical nutrition, to help people get healthy and stay healthy. Our diagnostic portfolio is one of the most comprehensive, most broadest portfolio of products in the industry. We sell home products, home testing products, all the way up to high throughput, high automation, laboratory instruments to do millions and billions of tests every single year. And I think that's important because if you think about healthcare, 70% of every healthcare intervention depends on some sort of diagnostic. And to be part of that and leading in that area is an important mission of Abbott. One of our businesses is our transfusion business, and that's really about testing blood and testing blood donations. And Abbott has a very important responsibility around the world in which we basically test 2/3 to 70% of the world's blood supply. And that is a mission that is very, very important for us, but it encapsulates a lot of the importance of our diagnostic business. And then, once you've realized that you have an issue, you have an illness, then how do we address that? And we do that through 2 of our divisions, medical devices, which I'll talk about, and pharmaceuticals also. Both these businesses, they're looking at the illnesses and what are the interventions, what are the medications that we can develop to help cure, to help treat, and or at least address some of the symptoms of those diseases. Our diversity is really based on the premise that we don't want to be dependent on a single product of a single geography in a single area or a single different type of customer. So our diversity is really based on the idea that we all know about, the risk, managing the risk through having a diverse portfolio. When we have all these different products in different segments, there's actually different timelines and sequences of how products come to market. Some divisions those R&D projects are 5 to 7 years. Some of the projects are 12 to 16 months, and having that diversity allows us to have a pretty well cadence of innovation. Geographically, we're very well balanced also. And I think one of the things that's very unique about Abbott from a healthcare perspective is who's actually paying for the products that we're developing. I think if you look at a lot of healthcare companies and you think about how much of their revenues come from a single payer system or insurance companies, you'd probably see that area to be north of 80%, in some cases north of 90%. And for Abbott, it's a little differently. 40% of our revenues are actually coming from consumers that are actually paying out of their own pockets for the healthcare. And that has an impact on how we think about not only how we're developing the products, but how we're bringing our products to market. But ultimately, this is about managing our risk and ensuring that on one end, we have an opportunity to have multiple ways to win in the market through having different types of positions, leadership positions in different businesses. But it also mitigates the risk. Right? And I think that for many years we always said, hey, a lot of opportunities to win, mitigate the risk of all of a sudden having a tough situation, a tough market. And we really didn't have much to prove on that downside. And I think our biggest proof point came during COVID, where some portions of our business got deeply impacted by COVID, but other portions of our business were able to let's say, benefit is the wrong word, but it was able to kind of bring value to people that needed those healthcare services that weren't necessarily being impacted by COVID. So when we think about the long-term investor of Abbott and the long-term, as Darryl was saying, this model has kind of served us very well, not only on the upside, but also protecting on the downside. The pipeline is the lifeline of any healthcare company, and how we go about it is very important. I've got some examples here of some of the products that are in the pipeline that we're developing and launching. I'd say on the medical device portfolio, which is one of our largest segments. Obviously, many of you might know already Freestyle Libre, which is our diabetes glucose monitor. We're now looking at that, as we always said, to be a platform and expanding that into other applications outside of diabetes. And we've announced that creation of a new product line called Lingo. We'll be able to use the manufacturing and the scale and everything we built for Libre and expanding. On the cardiovascular side, I've highlighted 5 products that we're super excited about. They're either to be launched in the next kind of 6 months or very early in their launch phases here. But this is a collection of products that combined do about $500 million in revenue and are growing 50% per year. We've now coined them the Fab Five, but we think that they have an incredible opportunity not only to drive value to Abbott, but to actually improve the lives of the people that have these diseases. On the diagnostic side, we really think about our pipeline in terms of 3 areas. One, menu expansion. Expanding the amount of tests that can run on already an installed base of large laboratory analyzers. We have one of the largest installed base of laboratory analyzers across the world, and everything that we can do to expand our menu, so create new tests to run on these, provides value to our customers and obviously provides value to Abbott. The second area is to look at some of those tests that are run in the lab and think about how do we bring those tests more closer to the patient through a decentralized version. Obviously, you've all known about our COVID test, Binax, but there are so many different opportunities for us, whether it's strep, which we've launched, RSV, which we're now hearing so much about, and flu. How do we bring those tests? And those are already launched and in the market, but how can we bring even more tests outside of the lab and bring that closer to the patient and to the consumer? And the third area is to actually look at tests that haven't even been invented yet. And think about how we can bring new markers to help in medical decision making. And one of them that we're very excited about is our TBI rapid test, traumatic brain injury, concussions. Our vision is that We'll be able to bring this technology to every single sports team, every single high school, every single college in this country. We already have a working test right now, and we're working with the FDA with all of our clinical trial work to be able to bring that to a form factor where a school nurse, a college trainer can do a rapid test, concussion test on the sideline and get a result in 15 minutes. From a nutrition perspective, we have a real strong cadence of bringing innovation into this business. Our next big launch is an infant formula and Similac, where we're going to be bringing a blend of 5 human milk oligosaccharides to our product. We were the first company to bring in HMO into the ingredients with 2 HMOs, and we're going to be bringing 5 HMOs. We've been able to expand our hydration brand from Pedialyte from infants and babies that are infected to expand it towards a more broader use and recognition of how important hydration is. And on our adult side, continue to innovate on our portfolio, bring in new ingredients in. I'd say the hero of the American diet over the last couple of years has been protein, and we'll be bringing a lot of more of that into our portfolio. And as we look at our medicines business, our pharmaceutical business, really serving the emerging markets and focusing on bringing high quality products across these 5 therapeutic areas. I think the important thing about how we look at this business is that these portfolios are developed locally. The local teams are the ones that develop what are the needs of the country, what are the specific requirements that the market is needing across these 5 areas. So a lot of our innovation in emerging markets in this area is very local and very decentralized. So we've been performing very, we've been one of the best performers, and we've been doing it for quite some time now. And I think it really comes down to a very disciplined execution on this kind of strategic framework of having a diversified business, picking the right businesses to be in where we can have an impact, develop robust innovation pipelines, and I've kind of gone through some of that right now. We generate strong cash flow. And we're able to take those cash flows and on one end, invest in our business for future growth. This year we'll be doing, going into next year, we'll be doing close to $2 billion in CapEx to invest in manufacturing, to be able to support the growth of our businesses. And then on the other side, be able to return some of that cash back to our shareholders. In 2021, we returned about 50% of our operating cash flow back to shareholders, while at the same time being able to invest in all of these pipelines and all of the manufacturing capabilities. And what has that resulted? Well, we've been able to outperform our peer group well over 2 to 1 in terms of total shareholder returns. We've been able to increase our dividend 30% over since 2020. In fact, this year marked the 50th consecutive year that Abbott has increased its dividend, and that's put us in a very select group of companies that have done this for 50 plus years consecutive every year. And that's really equated to about $20 billion of capital that we've returned back to our shareholders over the last 5 years. And to oversee the development of that strategy and to oversee the execution of that strategy, we have a strong board and strong governance model. First of all, a highly qualified and diversified board, not just in terms of time and role, age, gender, but also just as important in terms of skill sets and experiences. As you see, we have such a broad business that we need to have that diversity in our boardroom. A lead independent director and robust independent audit committees, nom and gov committees, comp and public policy committees. I think one of the really important things here for our board, and I think Daryl talked a little bit about this, is really to look at the work that we do in terms of risk mitigation and to try and anticipate what the upcoming risks are, whether it's cybersecurity, whether it's geopolitical, obviously, in today's world, but a lot of time dedicated to discussions about thinking ahead, about understanding some of the risks that are inherent in the market, in the world we live in, and the role that Abbott will play, and how to mitigate those for our long-term investor. I'd say that when it comes to ESG, this is not something new for Abbott. Yes, there's definitely been an upswing in terms of visibility at the board level, at the company level, in terms of what is a company doing. But I can tell you that, being 26 years at Abbott, this is not something that is new to us. We've been working on this for decades, and our results show. I'd say when we think about sustainability, one of the things that we think about is we can't think about it between 1 or 2 years, but we also can't think about it in terms of 25, 30 years. It's important maybe to have those aspirations, your 2050 kind of goal, but for us, really important is finding that balance. And our balance is the next decade, the next 10 years. What can we do? What's going to be important over the next 10 years? So in 2019, the team got together and we decided to, rather than bring in a lot of outside consultants to tell us what we should be thinking about, we actually got close to several hundred of our leaders across the world, across businesses, across functions, to get together and develop our 2020 to 2030 plan. What's going to be important for us over the next decade, and we have several things that we're going to work on that we've identified, and I'll talk about them here also. But core to that discussion was healthcare. And the fact that there is a crisis that is approaching us with healthcare. And I'm not here to argue that one crisis is more important than another crisis. Climate crisis is existential for all of us. But what we thought is where we could have the biggest impact as a healthcare company is to acknowledge some of the challenges that society is going to face as it relates to healthcare, whether it's access, whether it's workforce, and what are the things that we can do to address these issues and these crises that are coming. And I think the validation of our understanding of that this is an important crisis to think about, it's not an either or, it's an and, was during COVID. And how, to the brink, the global healthcare system got to regards to this. And I think it highlighted some of the challenges that will be ahead of us over the next 10, 20 years. The issue of access, the issue of having to lock people down and keep them isolated, one, to protect, but also because our healthcare system wasn't ready to deal with that inflow. And in essence, that's something that we're thinking about, and whether it's access or whether it's lack of workers in the healthcare space. So that discussion and that realization gave birth to, I think, a pretty radical idea in healthcare, and quite frankly, a different way of how to think about our role. We knew that if there's going to be less healthcare workers and there's going to be more people in the world and there's going to be potentially maybe less resources of healthcare, what can we do? And access and affordability was an area that we really felt passionate about. We need to think hard about this, and we need to solve the medical issue, the clinical problem. But that's not enough anymore. We have to solve that issue plus the access issue, plus the affordability issue. And the key thing that we realize is that we need to start designing and developing our products and inputting our innovation into solving that second piece of the equation. And the radical idea and the different thinking and the paradigm shift that we had to think about is, what's the reward for innovation? What's the prize a company obtains for developing something that nobody's developed, for doing it faster than others? Historically, across all industries, That reward, that innovation is I get to sell it at a higher price. It's a better product. It does something that nobody else does. So I get to sell it at 10%, 20%, 30% more than other products. That's true for a lot of industries, and it's definitely been true for healthcare, okay? But we need to think differently about what that, in the context of the crisis that we're going to face, we need to think differently about what is that reward now for us. And our view is that our reward for us is to be able to actually have our products not be confined to a small group of people, but to be able to amplify the access to a much larger group of people. And you don't have to sacrifice your revenues or your profits in doing that. You can do both. And we have evidence of that. Libre, for example, is one of our most successful products. And the notion behind that was, and the innovation behind that wasn't how to figure out how to measure a glucose number from somebody's arm versus pricking their finger and getting blood. Like, we had figured that out back in 2004. The innovation of Libre was to actually figure out how to scale that product, right, to a level that allowed us to have a cost position that will allow us to price it at a point that we could actually make it more democratic, right? When we launched our first product, we had about 4,000 users, and we failed at the access issue. We knew how to do it from a technical perspective, but we failed at the access issue. Libre addressed that, and now we have, instead of 4,000 users, we have 4.5 million users, okay? Binex, our COVID test, that was another example of the thinking, right, when every test in the US was costing about $100, $125. You know, we decided to launch the Binex test at $5, and we were public about it. And I remember hearing a lot of people, a lot of investors saying, why $5? You could have at least priced it at $15 or $20, right? You left profit on the table. And the answer is no, we didn't. We scaled up our testing technologies and our manufacturing that allowed us to price it and give much more access to a lot more people, while at the same time delivering a return to our shareholders. So this is really at the core of our sustainability plan, is understanding that access and affordability is going to be key, and that Abbott, with our innovation, has to solve the medical, the clinical problem, but simultaneously solve the access issue. So how do we do that? There are three areas that enable us to really focus our technology in terms of how to solve the access issue. And it's a cute little 3D little world, but it truly encapsulates what we're trying to do here. And what I'd like to do is actually play a 1-minute video on each one of these so you can understand what we're trying to do. On the digitized side, what you're going to see here is a technology that we developed to treat Parkinson's disease. And it's an implantable sensor that gets put in your brain and delivers small electrical pulses to control one's tremors, okay? This is it's a fantastic business that we're in. One of the things that we learned is to do this, a patient that has this has to go in frequently to get the settings adjusted. Okay, and there are almost like 50,000 different types of settings that a physician can do, and it's difficult for somebody with movement disorder to be able to dislocate themselves to go get this fine tune-up. So we developed a system that allows a physician to do that remotely, and we did it during COVID. So here's an example of Dr. Gupta from Mount Sinai interacting with a Parkinson's patient with the technology that we developed.
Via the Abbott Remote Care System virtual clinic, I'm actually going to do a demonstration where I'll shut the device off, I'll shut the stimulation off, and let's just see what the tremor looks like. So stimulation is on, tremor looks quite well controlled, and just bring your arm out for me. So we turn it off, good, and you can rest it down on your lap. Great, nice and still. So I'll go ahead and shut it off. So it is off right now. Looks like the tremor recurred quite a bit, yeah? No, quite severe. Can we have you reach out your arm? Yeah, okay. Found. And then put your arm down, that's great. And I'm gonna go ahead and turn it back on. It will ramp up slowly. So stimulation is going back on. And again, it's ramping up slowly. And voila, looks like tremor stopped. Let's have you bring your arm out again. That's wonderful. And you can put your arm down. Thank you.
So that's just one example of the connectedness of our devices and how we can bring that service and increase that access. I mean, there's only 173 centers in the world that do this. And people have to travel 400-500 miles to be able to get this consult. So to be able to do it remotely has had a tremendous impact. Another area that we've been talking a lot about is kind of decentralizing. So how do you move care from outside the hospital walls and bring it closer to the consumer? And one best example of the work that we've been doing is
we see an opportunity here now that people are more familiar with doing testing at home to expand that to other respiratory illnesses, since we have this whole suite of infectious disease tests that could be adapted. But we want to make sure that what we bring is going to be just as affordable and accessible and scalable and easy to use as the Binax Now test.
Yeah, when we design these tests, we want them to be a gateway to healthcare, not a barrier. Like Dr. Hussain was saying, you can reach out and talk to your doctor, your healthcare provider, based on the result that you got. You can run that test, like Alana was saying, while you're brushing your teeth in the morning, and then 15 minutes later you get a result, and then you can sort of engage your healthcare provider for that.
At Abbott, we're able to start building tests that we could have only dreamed about a few years ago. And that's thanks to the EUA process that's been put forth by the FDA. That makes all of that dream come to fruition. And so what we're looking at now is how we can take those needs and build a test that will really be accessible and build off of all of the expertise that we've put into our tests so far for other infectious diseases.
And then finally, the democratization through our technology, being able to price our technologies at a price point that makes it accessible and affordable, not for people that are well-funded, but for everybody who has the need. And here's an example in Libre.
Swelling inside my noisy mind. I was diagnosed with diabetes when I was 17 years old. I was in my senior year of high school. It was pretty shocking. Access to information was vital in me understanding my diagnosis. But it changed the trajectory of my life. I really had something super important to think about on a daily basis. Being part of Team Freestyle Libre has given me access to community. It's given me access to other diabetes advocates and their wealth of information and experiences. The access to all of this technology has simplified the way I treat and care for my diabetes. And having that access right there in the palm of your hands, that's incredible.
So we think about this commitment that we have to bring more access, to bring more equity. I mean, we have multiple different initiatives that we're working on, whether it's working with malnutrition, working with global partners, the American Diabetes Association, the Real Madrid Football Foundation, working with the Rwanda government to be able to expand healthcare to rural areas. So there's a lot of initiatives. I'd say probably one of them that we're most proud of, and it was, again, in the field of it's not an or, it's always an and when you find these ands, they're really great, which is how can we bring more diversity in our clinical trials. So we've worked with institutions in the past, and we've realized that the patients that have benefited or been part of those clinical trials, they're not as diverse as what the technologies for the diseases that we're developing actually are there for. So we had an experience this year where our enrollment rates in our trials were lagging, and a lot of the times we were thinking, well, it's COVID, people aren't going to the hospital, they're not getting involved in clinical trials. And we took a decision to say, okay, well, let's expand how we think about who our clinical trial partners are, and let's bring these trials and the know-how of how to conduct these trials to different types of hospitals, more community-based hospitals. And we've actually saw our enrollment rates for that specific trial actually go back to where we had originally planned and surpass it. And we actually finished the trial a little bit earlier. So I think this is an important area for us also, is that we can bring the technologies and the opportunity for those for a much diverse population, and it actually will help us in not only on the diversity of our data that we have regarding our technology, but also actually accelerates the time it takes to kind of complete those trials. And as I said, we are looking at ESG holistically. I talked a lot of detail about kind of this core idea, this core concept of access and affordability. But we know that to be successful, we have to look at sustainability across a broad range. So not just looking at our talent, our data and data privacy is becoming even more important. Product quality and safety, obviously, supply chain, and climate and water use. And as I think about our workforce, there's a genuine belief that the Abbott workforce should mirror the population that we're serving, and the population that we're serving is a global population, as I showed you. So how do we ensure that that population, our workforce, reflects that? 44% of our population, our global workforce, is female. 40% of our managers are female. 42% are from diverse backgrounds, and 33% of our U.S. management is from a diverse background. And those are important numbers to have. I think we've made a lot of progress on them, but I recognize that there's so much more that we can do. And that's what our focus is to keep on improving that diversity. And sometimes diversity, I think numbers are important, and they're important to track, and they're important to report, and they're important to be transparent about. But there's a lot of things that go into building a diverse workforce that goes beyond just numbers. Like, for example, 60% of the company's revenues are actually managed by two well-accomplished female leaders, Lisa Earnhardt, who's the head of our medical device business, who's an Abbott board member, and Andrew Weiner, who works in our rapid and molecular diagnostic business, who's also part of AdvaMed, the diagnostic group. They, through their day-to-day management, they're ultimately operating 60% of the company's revenues. We spend a lot of time investing in upskilling our workforce, providing them pathways to further their education. One of the things that I'm very proud about also was we heard a lot from workers that it was difficult to pay off their student debt and at the same time plan for retirement. So we actually put the first program in place in this country that allows that takes away that choice. We can do both. There's the and again. So if the employee makes contributions to their debt payment plan, we will fund some of their retirement and put in contributions on top of the regular 401 contributions that we do. And that's been super well received. We've got a robust an internal talent management process. I spend an equivalent of 45 days of the year discussing with every single business across the globe their teams, their talents, and what do we need to do to provide development for them. And that's resulted in about 85% of our key roles having development and succession planning from within and ready to go. And we spend a lot of time also building the pipeline of talent. We've got the #1 recognized college internship program for healthcare, and we're the first company to actually roll a high school STEM internship program also. And we've actually shared the blueprint of how to do that high school internship program publicly so that companies can use that blueprint and implement their own programs. One of the other areas that we've talked a lot about during that planning process is the notion of data. We hear so much about data, the importance of data, the value of data, but the fundamental belief that the data that we have belongs to our customers, belongs to our consumers, and that we have a responsibility to safeguard that data. And so we've developed a policy that's really based on 3 principles: being transparent about the type of data we're collecting, being responsible and safeguarding that data, and then being intentional. There's so much data that you can collect, but do we need to collect all that data, and why are we collecting that data, and what's the value that will be afforded to the person or to the customer that is providing that data to us? What can we provide back to them? So this is an important area for us. Our customer pledge is core and critical. We want to have an impact on people's lives. We want to allow them to live their fullest potential life, and we can only do that if every single day we're putting the customer at the center of everything that we're doing. And every year, once a year for 1 or 2 weeks, we make sure that we bring this customer pledge back into the entire company by bringing the customer into the company and exposing all employees to the impact of the work we're doing, and almost somewhat re-upping this pledge that we have to our customers. And one of the key quality policies that we have, we try to simplify it, and we called it making products as if they were for our own families. And that actually came from a situation where we had in one of our medical device businesses, a line worker that her job was to do final inspection of one of these kind of important heart valves. And her daughter was going to get implanted with one of those devices. And she does, we all do an incredible job at that final inspection, but she kind of went that level more, because she said, this product here that I'm inspecting is what's going to be implanted in my daughter. And she made sure that was the one that was going to be implanted in her daughter. And that kind of gave birth to this notion that we have a high standard, we expect a lot, and a high standard of our people, but bringing this more personal to our family members brings it a step higher in terms of what our purpose is. And then working and ensuring that we create a resilient chain, a resilient supply chain, ensuring that our suppliers are meeting the standards that we hold for ourselves. And one of the things that we noticed as we were looking at how much we spend on diverse suppliers was noticing that a lot of our diverse suppliers were very much in what I would call more the service areas, right? Service areas such as, I'd say, taking care of our facilities. And I noticed as we were looking through that was a high churn kind of business, that being part of that business, you could have an account, the account with Abbott one year, and then you could be switched out another year. So we looked and said, okay, how can we build more generational, sustainable kind of wealth in the more diverse supply chain? And one of the things that we looked at is, there's a lot of suppliers in medical devices and diagnostics that aren't as diverse as they could be. So we've actually been working with LISC, and we're providing a $40 million grant, not just money, but actually expertise and time from the Abbott engineers to help diverse businesses get into the business of medical device supply, diagnostic raw material supply, because we feel that's more sustainable in terms of building that that wealth and that sustainability going forward. So a lot of work has been going on over here. And then finally, climate. As I said in the beginning, this is just as important as that core principle that we had. If we are going to be champions of health, we also have to be champions for the environment. And there's a lot of work that we have been doing in the past. I'd say the key highlights for us in this new plan that we did is we wanted to make sure that our goals for emission reductions, for carbon control, for having a better impact on the footprint of our manufacturing network, that the goals that we did were scientifically based. So we applied for and to be part of the Science-Based Target Initiative, so that these goals and these targets could be validated and they have been by the SBTI Alliance for Water Stewardship. Water is a big issue and that's an important aspect. Right now we have 2 sites that have been certified, and that is not a lot, I agree. But what was important for us is to set up a framework by which we can look at this process of getting certification. So we have a site in California and another one in Spain that have been certified, and it's given us the framework about how we can then expand this to a lot more sites of Abbott that are in water-challenged areas. We have our targets on target right now in terms of our reductions. We've achieved a 17% reduction in Scope 1 and 2. Over 60% of our manufacturing sites are zero waste to landfill and certified, and we're spending a lot of time at looking at our packaging and how we can reduce our packaging on our products. So a pretty comprehensive plan with a core principle and a core belief of where Abbott can have a big impact. So in summary here, we don't view sustainability as a checkbox exercise. It's been part of our DNA for several decades right now. I think we've upped our game, and there's definitely more that we can do. But our key focus here is how can we use our force, our innovation, our products to help society deal with these issues that it's going to face. And we think that we're in the right spot, and our plan is well laid out. And we'll report on that plan every single year through our report. I don't think you'll see us make claims about what we're going to be doing or what's going to look like in 2050 and 2060. But what you will have from Abbott is a clear plan over the next 10 years with clear reporting and targets that we're working towards. So with that, I just want to thank you for your attention and for being here with me today. I do have time for questions if there are any.
Okay, we do have a couple questions for you.
Sure.
On page 14 of your 2030 sustainability plan, one of the plan's 4 targeted goals is build the innovative, diverse workforce of tomorrow. If diversity is a driver of innovation, why not raise and accelerate your 2030 diversity targets?
I love that, like perpetually dissatisfied. That's good. I would say yes. Listen, I think like I said, I think we've made a lot of progress from where we were before. The framework's in place. There's genuine belief on how we go about this. I would also say that, that page 14 is part of this one document that we put out, and it's a living document. And if there's an opportunity to do more, we're not going to slow down because we've achieved it already, before the 10 years are over. So we'll keep on working on that. And I think that we're in a great position to be able to kind of beat that and build off that because, like I said, I think diversity, there's a lot of lenses to it. And I think that as a global healthcare company, that's another lens of diversity, is how to think about our leadership, not just here in the U.S., but also think about it globally. And I think that we have plenty of examples around the world where the leadership, whether it's a female leadership or different types of leadership we have, is going to be just as important. So.
Great, thank you for your answer. Okay, another one for you. Product quality is a really important aspect of sustainability. Can you comment on how you think about it, particularly in light of the manufacturing changes you're experiencing in nutrition this year?
Sure. It is fundamental, and that's why we try to make it as personal as we could at the company, which is to kind of bring in the family as part of our quality process. So it is absolutely fundamental on how we think about it. I think the recall that we had to enact in February, I think it was the right thing to do. At the time, there wasn't a lot of information, but it was the right thing to do at the time. And I think one of the key things that you have to keep on working is, one, education on the importance of the work that we do. To ensure that we have the resources in place to be able to continue to build even more in our quality system. And I think the other thing is we have to have more redundancy. in our manufacturing, and that goes to some of the CapEx investments that we're making, not just in nutrition that I announced last week, but across all of our portfolio. How do we ensure that we do have redundancy and working towards this? I think the team has worked incredibly hard to address the shortage issue. We've used our network across the world to be able to bring more product in, specifically on the infant formula side. This last quarter, we actually we sold just the same amount of product that we sold prior to the recall. That was an important, but it is fundamental to what we're doing and to our mission.
Great, thank you. We have one last question for you. We heard from several CEOs yesterday on MAA. How do you think about MAA and any areas of focus?
So acquisitions? Yeah, okay, sorry, okay. Didn't recognize the third A, but that's okay. I would say, it's an important part. It's always been an important part of Abbott, and I don't feel that as part of our growth strategy that I laid out that we are dependent on having to do M&A. I like our organic position and all the pipelines that we have built. That being said, if there are opportunities, we are in a very strong balance sheet and cash position, and we will be as disciplined as we've always been, which is if there is a strategic technology or add-on that we can bring into the company that makes sense strategically and that makes sense financially, we're in a perfect position to be able to. That doesn't take away from our discipline. We'll remain disciplined in terms of how we look at the opportunities out there. Okay? Okay, thank you.
Thanks, that was great. Good answers. Thank you. Thanks a lot. Appreciate it. Well, thanks for that update. Kind of a very comprehensive update to look at the business integrated across, ties back to the principles of the organization. And I've seen and presented many investor presentations, but there's not that many times you tear up. But that Parkinson's video was just so powerful in terms of kind of the impact that the products have on that. So great progress in the last 100+ years, and good to see the plans here as we go forward.